Hey guys, three things have come up in the last day or so that we just want to talk about quickly. One is someone asked about Abe-san, that they'd heard that Abe-san, the Prime Minister's going. Yeah, it appears he'll be making a speech tonight, actually. He was in hospital for checks about a week or two ago. He was in hospital for about 8 hours for checks. So that was 1 or 2 weeks ago, and they started talking about his health then. You know, there was all sorts of speculation by the media about his health. And then this week he passed his milestone for his being the longest serving Prime Minister in Japan. So that was sort of his milestone that he possibly had been aiming for, because he passed that milestone this week, so now he's Japan's longest serving Prime Minister. And then the last 24 hours they were saying he's going to make an announcement this afternoon at 5 o'clock, which he hasn't made, or actually he probably has made now while we've been in the car, and it was expected that he was going to say that he was retiring due to ill health or health issues or something like that, and the Prime Ministership will be passed on to somebody else. So that's what we know so far. So it's those sorts of things, they don't tend to affect us terribly much, because, you know, one Prime Minister or another in Japan is pretty much going to be the same. There's a couple of options after him. One of them's probably better than the other one, but we'll see what happens with that. That's about as much. That's probably the longest talking about Japanese politics we've done in 10 years of making videos. It's just not a subject. Lots of people ask about well, not a lot. Some people ask about politics, you know, can you talk about Japanese politics? And it's just not a subject that we're interested in or sort of follow terribly closely, you know. Some people are really into it and really follow it closely. That 72-year-old man that we refer to sometimes, he follows politics pretty closely, and he sort of spoke recently to us about the two options if Abe goes, or when Abe goes, you know, which one's better and why. But yeah, if you're not into politics, it's not really something that sort of stirs you enough to follow it, is it? So anyway, there's that. That was enough talking about politics. The other two subjects were, one guy asked, he said he'd booked tickets to come to Japan in April, and did we think that was likely that he'd be allowed in April? Yeah, the answer we gave him was probably not. I mean, you just don't know, do you? You can't see into the future. We made some predictions at the start of this pandemic and were wrong based on what we'd heard a supposed expert say. We thought that we listened to that guy, and it turned out to be wrong. So you just don't know. You just don't know, do you? But we would suspect, he said specifically he's coming from the US, and, you know, Japan's in pretty good shape compared with some countries, but the US isn't. So it's just hard to imagine tourists from the US being allowed in anytime soon. You know, hopefully they can be, but, you know, it's just hard to imagine with the state that the US is in at the moment. It's hard to imagine they will be. So, you know, that's the answer to that guy. And that leads us to the next one, which is the Olympics. And we get asked about that all the time. What do you think's going to happen with the Olympics? Well, we got that asked at the beginning of the year, and we predicted that they were going to cancel them for the year, and they did. And then now we get asked, do you think it'll happen next year? We don't think so. We just don't think so. I mean, they're going to have to decide if they're going to cancel them again for the next year. You know, the plan for next year, they're going to cancel that plan. They've really got to do that in the next 6 months, haven't they? And it's just hard to imagine. I mean, Japan's doing pretty well, but even if Japan gets it totally under control over the next 6 months, the rest of the world won't, will it? You know, you look at the state of some of the other countries around the world, and they're just not on top of it at all, which means 6 months from now, they're not going to be in a much better position than they are now. And just Japan won't let them in. So what we hear all the time is lots of talk in the media and on television about what can be done, because there's all these issues, of course. Lots of big companies invested a lot of money, and small companies too, small businesses, invested a lot of money in preparation for the Olympics, you know. and a big build-up, and they're going to make all this money during the Olympics. So they spent lots of money. They built hotels and they did all sorts of stuff, and of course then the government spent billions of dollars building all the stadiums and everything, and so the government's been saying, oh well, we need to do things, or people have been saying the government needs to do things to help out the businesses that are struggling while they're waiting for the Olympics now, because they invested all that money, and now they have to wait for the Olympics to get their money back. And so there's been lots of talk about that, and the government talks and everybody talks like the Olympics is still going to happen in 2021. But again, and of course they sort of have to, because at this point that's the plan, isn't it? At this stage, that's the plan. So they sort of do have to move forward as if it's really going to happen and make their decisions. And there's all sorts of talk about what they can do about COVID, if and safety and all that sort of stuff. And so of course they have to keep going with their preparations, assuming it's going to happen. But just a prediction from an outsider's point of view who doesn't know anything about anything, just a prediction: Japan won't cancel, because that's not Japanese style. If they're hosting the Olympics, they're not going to be cancelling it. But our prediction will be that Japan will consult with the Olympic Federation and they will cancel it, because it's not going to happen, is it? It's hard to imagine. They're not going to hold the Olympics with half the countries, or with 80% of the countries. You can imagine a lot of the athletes even wouldn't want to compete if they're only competing with 80% of the world. That sort of defeats the purpose of the Olympics, isn't it? It'd devalue an Olympic medal if you're only competing with a percentage of the world, that lots of the world couldn't come. So it's hard to imagine. It's got to be a sort of all or nothing thing, hasn't it? Where everybody can come and compete, or they cancel it. It seems to be that would be the logical way to do it. So, and it's just hard to imagine how they could possibly do it, because it's more than just the athletes, isn't it? Even if they said, let's hold the Olympics with no spectators and we'll just put it on television and everybody can watch it on television, so there'll be no spectators, just the athletes competing. But then you've got all the people that travel with the athletes, you've got all the people that organise the events, you've got it's a massive. Is there a bigger international event than the Olympics? It's just a huge thing, isn't it? And all those people coming from all around the world seems to be a totally irrational thing to do in a pandemic, doesn't it? That would go against all logic, wouldn't it? That, okay, there's a pandemic happening, let's bring people from all around the world into one place, and then inevitably put them all together in small spaces. There'd be no way to have that number of people in Tokyo or around Japan without them being in small spaces, buses and trains and aeroplanes and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, our prediction from an outsider's point of view, who often gets it wrong, our prediction will be that they'll just cancel it, and they'll postpone it till 2024 would be the logical thing. Let's let Japan have the Olympics in 2024, and that gives the world 4 years to get everything under control and get it all settled down, and either that or something unexpected could happen, or something hopefully could happen, like a vaccine. Like suddenly they start making vaccines that are effective and they can give it to everybody. That'd be great, wouldn't it? But again, hard to imagine vaccines being released and given to everybody, and everybody within 6 months. Again, hard to imagine, isn't it? So it'd be nice. I mean, that'd be ideal, wouldn't it? But life is rarely ideal, is it? We've learnt that this year, haven't we? The 2020's been the year for learning that. So yeah, we anticipate. So this video really is for those people too who keep asking about the Olympics. What do you think is going to happen? Well, we'll know in 6 months' time, won't we? But until then, this is going to be our response. This video is our response. We anticipate it's going to be cancelled again, and rather than delay it another 12 months, which would make it 2022, it'd just make more sense just to cancel it altogether and just hold it in 2024 in Tokyo. And by then everybody would have got themselves sorted out, hopefully. So very unfortunate for a lot of athletes, because obviously a lot of athletes are going to be peaking right now because they expected to be at the Olympics. So their training would have been building up for right now, and another 4 years for a lot of them would be past the ends of their careers probably. But you know, when you consider that there's so many people losing their lives at the moment, that sort of gets priority over people's careers, doesn't it? You know, so there's people losing their lives and people losing their careers at the moment, aren't they? So it's just the way that is. So anyway, there it is. Just as a byline too, friend of a friend today told us that his friend, now our friend told us today that his friend has COVID. So our friend had PCR test today. So I don't know about you guys, but that's the closest we've come so far to any sort of COVID connection, you know. So a friend of a friend has it. So our friend who we saw 1 week ago was PCR tested today. So obviously we're sort of interested in the result of that. But he has no symptoms. So and his friend had no symptoms. So not that that means anything, but we'll see what happens anyway. All right, there it was. RB going. Our friends from America probably can't come soon. Sorry. Not for holidays. You wouldn't think. There's for other reasons. Some will be allowed in probably, but yeah, not for tourists. And yeah, the Olympics. Yeah, we don't think so. We shall see, won't we? Anyway, there it was. More videos coming soon.